Prismatica Prissy Von Glitterhorn, yes, actual unicorn, pastel pink with a mane that looks like someone melted a box of hyacinth crayons, clocked in at the Meadowbrook Department of Motor Vehicles at precisely 8:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Ennui. The time clock was mounted too high for her forehoofs, so she simply leaned forward and gave the button a boop with her horn, which obligingly glowed a faint teal. Worklunk. Another day, another 85 forms in triplicate. Prissy loved public service, but even she admitted that the DMV lobby could suck the sparkle out of a Lisa Frank folder. She trotted past rows of customers, marinating in fluorescent lighting, the air thick with sighs so deep they qualified as minor windstorms. At Windows 7, her station, she found the usual stack of Form 10D application for renewal of vehicle registration, Heavy Sigh Edition, Form 42Z, affidavit of having read the affidavit, and, mysteriously, Form 99K, please don't ask the form. Next to the pile sat a stamp pad and a tiny bottle of plain black ink. Prissy shuddered. Black ink was the DMV of inks, effective and but joyless. She rummaged in the bottom drawer for her own preferred implement, the rainbow stamp. The stamp, a hoof-held contraption she'd ordered from an artisan gnome in Portland, laid down 6 concentric arcs of color at once. The gnome had advertised it for wedding invitations, toddler birthday cards, and general acts of whimsy, but Prissy had found a fourth use: mildly alarming bureaucrats. With a flick of her horn, she uncorked a vial of iridescent ink and flooded the pad. As long as she met her daily quota, nobody had grounds to complain, and besides, the customers actually smiled when handed a receipt that looked like a tie-dye donut. Her first petitioner of the morning was Harold L. Dingle, a 42-year-old man sporting a slapdash come-over that might have been illegal in 3 states. He slid Form 10D under the glass and cleared his throat. "Registration renewal," he said, eyes locked on the floor tiles as if they offered moral support. Prissy verified the VIN, checked payment, and pressed the rainbow stamp with flourish. "There you go, Harold, and may your wills ever roll true." Harold blinked at the prismatic spiral now decorating the lower left corner of his paperwork. A smile twitched on his face, an exotic sensation to him, judging by the rust. "Well, thanks. That's kinda pretty." "Life's too short for grayscale," Prissy declared. She slid the completed form back through the slot and rotated her neck, vertebrae popping like bubble wrap. 1 customer down, only 84 to go. Things chugged along without incident until 10:17, IEMO. That was when the intercom rasped, "Von Glitterhorn, please report to Desk 3 for special assignment." Special assignments were, 9 out of 10 times, code for "Something stupid happened, and you look magical enough to fix it." Prissy sighed but complied. Desk 3 belonged to Dolores McCracken, supervisory lifer and sworn enemy of frivolity. Her spectacles dangled from a jeweled chain as she thumbed through a packet thicker than a Victorian novel. Beside her, Assistant Manager Kyle looked as though someone had poured him into his khakis and forgotten to say stop. "Prismatica," Dolores began, enunciating each syllable like a judge handing down community service. "Our computer system is down again. Citizens are still arriving for appointments to obtain Class K leisure licenses, karaoke endorsements, and IT says we won't have the server back up for 3 hours." Prizzy tilted her head. "Oh dear, so you need me to—" Dolores slid across a banker's box stuffed with blank Form 88Y. Application for karaoke endorsement. Subsection C, power ballots. "Process them manually," she sighed. "Each applicant must verify they understand decibel limits, microphone sharing etiquette, and that journeys Don't Stop Believin' may only be performed once per venue per evening." "Understood." Prissy accepted the box. The rainbow stamp twitched in her satchel like a puppy eager to play fetch. She returned to Windows 7, flipped the placard to Class K processing, and waved the first applicant forward. A teen in a hoodie bounced up, earbuds leaking tinny pop music. "Need my karaoke license pronto," he said. "Auditions at noon." "No problem," Prissy chirped. She skimmed his form, confirmed he could name at least 3 songs outside the top 40 per Regulation 6C, and stamped it THOAP. A jubilant arc of color blooming across the declaration line. The teen grinned. That is the dopest stamp I've ever seen. He took a selfie with the form before scampering off. Next came a retired school teacher, then a pair of identical twins who harmonized everything they said, and then a man who looked like he bench-pressed Volkswagens for fun. Prissy handled each with efficiency, so sparkly it could have been a K-pop video. Rainbow stamp. Next, rainbow stamp. Next. 10 minutes later, she'd cleared 15 applicants, a miracle by DMV standards. Word traveled faster than auto-tune on a reality show. People ditched their half-completed registration lines and flocked to Windows 7, holding napkins, Post-its, and in one case the side of a pizza box, begging for karaoke forms. The lobby, previously a swamp of despair, vibrated with nervous excitement. Acting entirely within procedure if one squinted at the margins, Prissy produced a stack of Form 88Y Mini, a half-page abridged version designed for promotional events. These weren't normally used, but hey, the system was down and nobody wanted a riot. Dolores poked her head out of her office just long enough to make sure nobody had set anything on fire. Seeing only smiling customers, she retreated quietly, suspicion gnawing, but evidence lacked. By noon, Prissy had distributed 64 karaoke licenses. Lines that typically dragged for hours melted faster than sherbet on asphalt. She developed a rhythm. Glance, initial, stamp, disco flourish of the tail, next. Sparkles occasionally popped off her horn like festive static electricity, but nobody minded. Actually, several toddlers squealed with delight, convinced they'd met an unofficial Disney princess. It wasn't until 1:30 p.m. that something resembling a complication arose. A bespectacled woman in a cardigan approached, clutching a 3-ring binder labeled Local Noise Ordinances and You. She adjusted her glasses. "Excuse me, miss. Glitterhorn, you see, I live above the Crooning Cactus Bar. I'd like to object to the issuance of any karaoke endorsements within 3 miles of my apartment after 10 o'clock p.m. Prissy offered her the polite DMV smile. 40% empathy, 60% please move along. Totally understand. Are you here to file a formal complaint? The woman produced Form 57R, complaint, regarding anticipated nuisance. Triplicate carbon copies flapping like bat wings. Yes, and I'd also like a provisional license limiting any renditions of Bohemian Rhapsody to 2 minutes. Prissy checked the codebook. Nowhere did it mention time-capping Freddie Mercury. She gently slid the form back. I'm afraid the DMV cannot restrict specific songs by duration. That would fall under the Department of Cultural Expression, different building across town. The woman harumphed. Bureaucracy? Indeed, Prissy said with a twinkle. She returned to her stack. Next? The afternoon flowed by in technicolor. Without intending to, Prissy discovered she could judge an applicant's karaoke style by the sound their shoes made on the linoleum. Staccato heels? Probably Whitney Houston. Soft sneakers? Ed Sheeran. Steel-toed work boots? Undoubtedly something by AC/DC. She'd begun casually offering song suggestions with each stamped approval, turning the process into an impromptu talent consulting session. Customers left not only licensed, but also artistically self-actualized. At 3:07 p.m., Dolores emerged once more, holding a clipboard like a riot shield. Prismatica, a word. Prissy's co-workers, who had been enjoying an unprecedented lull in frustration, watched nervously. She followed Dolores into the file room, which smelled like warm toner and existential dread. What in the name of civil procedure is happening out there? Dolores demanded. We're getting calls from City Hall. People are tweeting about how the DMV is lit. I had to Google what that meant. Prissy fluttered her eyelashes. The server was down, so I processed the karaoke licenses manually. As ordered, I may have expedited. Dolores pinched the bridge of her nose. You processed over 100 applicants in 4 hours. That is statistically impossible unless you skipped mandatory auditory sensitivity disclosures. I covered them verbally. Also, I included a pamphlet. Prissy produced a folded brochure titled Respect the Mic, Your Neighbor's Eardrums Matter, complete with cartoon earplugs. Dolores opened it, blinked at the rainbow gradients, then sighed. The public loves it. The mayor's office sent a muffin basket. But now people expect this level of efficiency. Her voice took on a tone normally reserved for reading calorie counts on nacho cheese. "We are the DMV, Glitterhorn. We don't do Swift." Prissy's ears drooped. "Should I slow down?" "No," Dolores grumbled, surprising even herself. "We need happier citizens. Just maintain minimal compliance." Back in the lobby, the next applicant was a silver-haired gentleman in a bolo tie, brandishing an acoustic guitar missing two strings. The line behind him curved like a party snake, but nobody seemed annoyed. Instead, they swapped stories about go-to numbers and secret harmonies. The DMV had transformed into a pre-game green room. "License for you, sir," Prissy said, stamping. He tipped his cowboy hat. "Mighty kind. Planning to serenade my high school sweetheart tonight. Figured I'd keep it legal. Best of luck. Might I suggest Can't Help Falling in Love? Now there's a classic." He winked and strutted off, whistling. At 4:45 p.m., with closing time imminent, the computer system finally sputtered back to life. Screens flickered, printers coughed. The place smelled briefly of scorched pixels. Kyle announced via megaphone, "Standard operations will resume tomorrow. Thank you for your tolerance." Prissy released the breath she'd been holding since breakfast. She sanitized her rainbow stamp, placed it lovingly in its velvet pouch, and began tidying her workspace. Multicolored confetti flecks, residue from earlier horn sparkles glimmered on the countertop like miniature northern lights. Just as she was about to log off, a lanky figure in an ill-fitting suit stumbled to the window. He looked vaguely haunted. "Tell me it's not too late," he panted. "I need a karaoke license for tonight. Battle of the Ballads. Grand prize is a 6-month cruise and my mother's already packed." Prissy consulted the wall clock. Technically, they closed in 10 minutes, but the rush had died and her stamp itched for one last hurrah. "Form 88Y?" He nodded frantically. "Here," she skimmed. "Preferred genre. Anything that makes people cry in a good way. Ambitious. Please, I've got a killer rendition of Unchained Melody. Approved." Thwap went the rainbow stamp. The man stared at the Technicolor seal as if it were a treasure map. "Bless you, magical civil servant." He bolted for the exit. Prissy beamed. Another satisfied vocalist on the streets. Legally compliant and emotionally prepared, she clocked out, this time tapping the machine with her tail, and trotted toward the staff lot. Evening sunlight washed over the asphalt. Birds chirped. Off in the distance, someone practiced scales, maybe B-flat, a bit flat on the high note. She smiled, knowing she'd helped unleash that practice session upon the world, legally sanctioned and pamphlet-educated. The following morning, Prissy arrived to find a handwritten sign on the door, now offering express karaoke licensing, Windows 7. Dolores stood beside it, sipping chamomile tea like someone who'd watched her existential framework tilt, and decided to lean with it. "Might as well capitalize on the goodwill," she muttered. Inside, the queue was already buzzing, people trading mic-holding techniques like baseball cards. A teenage girl spent her wait time choreographing dance steps using the velvet rope stanchions. An elderly man engineered a smartphone stand out of paper clips so he could scroll lyrics hands-free. Kyle approached, a tablet in hand. "Feedback from yesterday," he said. 97% customer satisfaction. Someone used the phrase magically fast. Another wrote a poem about rainbow stamps. He paused, eyebrows climbing. "We've never hit 97. Last month we were flirting with 19. Prissy shrugged modestly. "I'm just doing my civic duty." Around 10 o'clock AA, a new wrinkle appeared. The state regulatory board had sent an inspector, Mrs. Penelope Farnsworth, a woman whose bun was so tight it affected local air pressure. She wore a badge that said Auditor, Scourge, Level 2. Without a word, she parked herself in a corner with a clipboard, taking notes so furiously the paper smoked. One by one, Prissy processed applicants, articulating decibel science and referencing legal codes with unicornian confidence. She resisted the urge to sprinkle extra sparkles in front of the auditor. Best to appear professionally magical, not ostentatiously so. At 11:43 a.m., Mrs. Farnsworth finally stepped forward. "I notice you are using non-standard ink." "It meets legibility requirements and is archivally safe," Prissy replied. "And these abbreviated forms?" Section 12, subparagraph 4, specifies full length only. Emergency server outage yesterday, Prissy said. All data has since been transcribed into digital records, cross-checked and uploaded. She gestured to Kyle, who nodded while furiously typing. Mrs. Farnsworth scanned the lobby. Not a single disgruntled face. Some customers actually jigged in place to a silent rhythm. She clicked her pen shut, a gesture that sounded like a gavel. Very well, carry on. Then she added, almost begrudgingly, nice colors. After she left, the room exhaled as if released from a spell. Dolores high-fived Prissy, a rare meteorological event. All right, Glitterhorn, what's next? Are we offering yodeling permits? Interpretive dance registrations? Prissy chuckled. Let's master karaoke first. One joyous license at a time. The day rolled smoothly until mid-afternoon, when Fred, the janitor, poked his head into the break room. You might want to see this. His mustache twitched like it was about to burst into song itself. Prissy followed him to the lobby where spontaneous karaoke had erupted. License holders, gleeful in their new legal freedom, had decided to practice. Someone had wheeled in a portable PA system. Receipts suggested they'd purchased it during lunch. The DMV waiting room, the holiest temple of Hush Now, pulsed with an impromptu rendition of Sweet Caroline. Customers who had no business belting ba 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 did so with reckless gusto. Dolores gaped. They can't do that in here. Kyle checked the rulebook. Technically, once licensed, they are allowed to perform anywhere that does not specifically forbid amplified music. And we never got around to posting that sign. Prissy trotted onto an unused service desk, activating her horn like a kindly disco ball. Friends, Romans, belters, lend me your ears. Please keep it under 90 decibels and share the mic. Also, tip your janitor. He has a mop, not a magic wand. The singers cheered and obeyed, adjusting volumes. Fred gave an appreciative nod. For the rest of the afternoon, the DMV operated like a crossover episode between The Office and Glee. People completed paperwork between verses. When someone's number flashed on the screen, they'd pause mid-chorus, file their forms, then dash back to finish the song. Efficiency didn't just hold, it blossomed. Media inevitably caught wind. By Thursday, a local news crew arrived, shoving cameras into faces and capturing footage of a grandmother nailing Living on a Prayer. The segment aired that night under the headline, DMV of Dreams. Twitter fainted. With fame came logistics. Building codes required Prissy to draft a cue karaoke policy, ensuring songs contained appropriate language and lines kept moving. She installed a skip option button, press it, and you hopped back into line without losing your place in the queue. It worked brilliantly. No one felt trapped. Everyone felt heard. One challenge remained, the Friday rush. Historically, the line on Friday wrapped around the building twice, featuring people whose paperwork had the emotional consistency of cottage cheese. Prissy spent Thursday night polishing her rainbow stamp and rehearsing motivational slogans. Friday dawned. A red sun rose as if embarrassed by what humanity was about to do to total eclipse of the heart. By 9:00 a.m., the line indeed snaked into the parking lot. But the moment customers stepped through the glass doors, ambient panic evaporated into a fizz of anticipation. A sign-up sheet for open queue karaoke awaited them next to the info kiosk, flanked by complimentary throat lozenges. Prissy worked like a unicorn possessed, minus the exorcism. Stamp, advise, encourage, stamp. Each approval felt like unlocking a new level in a video game where the final boss was melancholy. At noon, she glanced up to find Dolores at the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. For you, Dolores said, offering one. It bore a whipped cream swirl and rainbow sprinkles. Some influencer sent over a crate. Apparently, we're trending. Prissy sipped. Cotton candy latte. Ridiculous. Delicious. Thank you, boss. Dolores hesitated, then asked, almost shy, Do you think someone my age could get a karaoke license? Prissy's grin was so wide it needed its own license. Window 7 is open, ma'am. Minutes later, Dolores possessed Form 88Y stamped in radiant color. She tucked it into her blazer like a secret love letter. Maybe I'll try it, she mumbled. Something by Carole King. The day zipped by. At 4:59 p.m., the final customer, a weary nurse fresh off a 12-hour shift, received her license. The line was gone. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and dreams fulfilled. As Prissy locked her drawer, Dolores approached the PA system, still perched by the stanchions. Clearing her throat, she said, "If nobody minds, I'd like to close out our business week." Everyone's staff, lingering customers, even Mrs. Farnsworth, who'd returned just to observe, turned. Dolores selected a track. Soft piano chords flowed. "You've Got a Friend." Her voice, tentative at first, warmed like sunlight on old stone. When she hit the chorus, the entire room joined in, guided by Prissy's horn casting gentle beams of chromatic light across the ceiling. When the song ended, there was no awkward silence, just a hush of shared humanity. Dolores dabbed her eyes, laughed, and declared, "Department of Emotional Vehicles, tonight we're the Department of Emotional Vehicles." Prissy couldn't have scripted it better. The unicorn gathered her belongings, rainbow stamp safely nestled among paper clips and breath mints. As she trotted into twilight, she reflected on how easily bureaucracy could morph into community with a little color and a lot of music. She'd come to the DMV hoping to serve, but she'd ended up starring in the most improbable mashup this side of a karaoke catalog. Out in the parking lot, she heard a familiar tune wafting from an idling sedan. Harold L. Dingle, belting "Don't Stop Believin' with the windows down." She laughed so hard her horn sparked. The world was still full of forms, regulations, and black ink monotony, but as long as she had her rainbow stamp and perhaps a backup vial of glitter toner, Prismatica von Glitterhorn would keep coloring inside the lines, outside the lines, and occasionally turn the lines into chart-topping duets. Because, after all, life's too short for grayscale.